Hey ladies, happy Friday. I have a couple of questions that have come in over DM, so I wanted to answer those for you all. I'm looking down because I'm checking my feed here to make sure I can read all of the comments. If you pop into this live, please feel free to write down any comments or questions below. I'm happy to field those. For those of you who are new to the space, my name's Jenny Glick. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a certified sex therapist, but in this space, I'm a relationship mentor, which means I'm here to help guide you to the next steps and stages of your relationship. So I'm just looking here. Okay, I should be able to see your comments. So with that, let's dive in. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about the ordinary next step. I get a lot of questions from women about things that have to do with them feeling stuck often for years or decades. I tend to work with a lot of women who have been stuck for many decades in their relationship. That's not uncommon in my world. And what I tend to see is that the most ordinary next step is the step that one can freeze around unless one has a map, a guide, real commitment, determination, a community, something to take them beyond their self-sabotage. And part of what you have, because you're here, is information. And so if you apply what I suggest, then things could go much better for you so that you don't have to keep defaulting back into the old self-saboteur, that sabotaging pattern that you tend to have. So let's get right into it. So here's how it goes. When you've been in a relationship for a long period of time, what happens is you build a kind of template. You build a system for how it is that you do what you do in your relationship. And that's efficient and effective because, you know, every morning you wake up with the same person. And so you're having a similar dialogue over and over again. But what it also does is it patterns your brain to keep you kind of in really particular grooves. So, you know, when you have that same argument over and over and over again with your partner, you've patterned a whole lot of grooves, which is why when your partner does A and it triggers you and you have the B response, right? You feel like you just fly into that mode. Do you know what I'm talking about? Over and over and over again. And so then that reactive pattern gets stronger and stronger and stronger, right? It makes sense. And so if you are doing self-help work or working with a therapist or trying to do things different, and I've had a couple of you come in recently who've shared that you're in couples counseling, you're doing individual counseling, you're reading lots of books, and things aren't changing. And things don't change, people change. And if you want to change, literally the thing that you're changing is when you get that trigger, whatever it is, probably from your partner, that reaction that you have, right, where you pop back into being angry, going into the narratives in your head that sound something like, why is it always me? How come we always have to have this fight? Why don't you listen to me? How come it's so hard? All of those things. That groove is what needs to change. And the most ordinary thing to do, right, would be to not react, to respond, to do something very ordinary, like take a breath, like count to 10. I'm not the first person to tell you that, right? But what happens is the most ordinary thing is the thing that feels so impossible in that moment when you're like internally, right? Because internally, I just wrote about this the other day in the space, it can feel like wrestling a crocodile. It's like, how could he do this? Why doesn't she listen to me, right? So much is coming up, and it can feel like if you don't say anything that you're muting yourself. It can feel like you're being a doormat. It can feel like you're just taking it and you're like, I'm not going to just take it, right? I get that. However, the most ordinary next step that needs to happen in that moment, if you want to change that dynamic, is for you to do something that is not the reaction. And the reaction has been patterned for years and probably decades. Lots of the women who I work with have been doing the same thing for 20, 30 years. That groove is like the Grand Canyon, right? It's really patterned. And so as soon as that stimuli happens, right, as soon as the partner says whatever it is that they're saying or doing, whatever's happening, as soon as that happens, it is inviting a 20-year history of a response. And the ordinary thing that you need to do is to say, I'm not going to do that response. I'm going to choose something else. But our practice of sabotaging ourselves, of going to the thing that's the most known and that's the most comfortable, doesn't mean I like it, doesn't mean it gets me the outcome I want. It means it feels safe because it's predictable, right? Because doing something else, not reacting, instead seeing, this is what my partner's showing up as, doing, saying, believing, whatever. And rather than doing my old triggered reaction, I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to engage in a new way. I'm going to consider that I am powerful. All of you in here are powerful, more powerful than you know. And if you know how powerful you are, then it is your responsibility to use your power with discernment, that you use your power for the betterment of yourself, of your family, of the team, if you're in a committed relationship, which means in that moment, me spewing, broadcasting my anger, my resentment, my contempt is not the thing that is going to create a space for something new, something vital, something alive, compassion, curiosity, right? You all know that. If you know how powerful you are, then in that moment, when you get that trigger, right, is delivered to you, in that moment, man, you breathe. You do the most ordinary thing, which is you breathe and you ground. We spend a lot of time in my 8-week program working with women, teaching them how to breathe and ground. Right? And here's the thing, in one of my graduate spaces, we were just talking about this today, this still happens for me, and I teach it, and I know how to do it. I wrote a whole curriculum on it, right? And I'm human, and I've been on a sleepover with the same person for 24 years. You better believe I get activated sometimes. I did today, right? And I know that I am freaking powerful. And I know that if I use that power in a way to tear him down, even if I'm mad, even if he did do the thing that I'm upset about, it's not going to serve me or him ultimately, right? What it's going to do is take us, drag us to a place that I don't want to have to crawl back out of. And so in that moment, I did the most ordinary thing that I teach the women who I mentor to do, which is setting a boundary with myself and saying to my husband, okay, I need to take care of myself right now. And I took an hour and a half and I breathed and I anchored and I yelled by myself somewhere. And I did a movement practice that I had to let myself feel all the feelings that are coming up, right? All the feelings. We get to feel all of those feelings. So I did. And then as I processed through the feelings, I was able to organize myself to hook back into the person that I made a commitment to 20 some years ago, and the person who I've now made a commitment to for myself the last 11 years since I've decided I'm not going to be a pain in the ass to be married to. I'm going to up-level myself and show up in a way that is a higher version of me. And yeah, it's somewhat about him, but it's really mostly about me, right? Because that's who I want to be on this earth with my breath, with how it is that I show up, right? So the question to you is, how is it that you're using your power? Because you're powerful. I talk to so many women who are like, I'm so powerful. I'm like, great. What are you using that power for? Who are you elevating with that power, right? Hopefully yourself and those around you. And I know that most of you do. And if you're human like me, then you have those moments where you trip and you tumble. And in that moment, your invitation is to do the most ordinary thing, which is to breathe and to let go of that rope, that tug of war rope that you want to pick up and go into. Who's wrong? Who's wrong? You're wrong. You did the thing. You said that you weren't going to do it and you did it, right? That's the thing, the practice thing that we want to go to and yank our partner into the mud. And the most ordinary thing is to drop the rope and to say, oh, if that was going to work, it would have worked by now. So I'm going to choose something else. So the women who I work with decide that they're ready to do something else. And most of us, I mean, I know for me, when I made that decision 11 years ago, I didn't know what the other thing to do was, because that groove was so deep for me. It was like, well, yeah, it would be really easy to breathe and do all that stuff, fancy pants, mentor, whatever. But you don't know what he did. You don't know my life circumstance. You don't know, right? And I get it. We're human. We say those things and it's fine. And until we're willing to recognize, I can either argue for my old pattern, which is cool. That means that's where you're at. Nothing wrong with it. When you're ready to say, I don't want to do the old pattern anymore, right? Show me the other way, uncle. Here's what you do. You drop the rope and then you feel yourself in that moment going, pick up that rope, go into that fight. And that's where you just came face to face with your shadow, right? That's you coming face to face with your guru, with your teacher internally, right? And so practicing in that moment, getting out of your comfort zone, because that's where you build strength. You build strength outside of your comfort zone in that moment. And I find that having a support around that for some of us is really important. I know for me in the early days it was. I had a very dear friend who I would call because I just felt so like I was coming out of my skin. It felt so hard not to go into the old groove, right? And so having a support, a community, if you have a friend, maybe you have a friend in here. I know several of you have been adding old college roommates and girlfriends and sisters. So make a pact with each other and support each other on it. Awesome, right? I'll tell you how to do it. You get to then do it, right? We call it pivoting, where you pivot in that moment. You don't go to the old 1.0 patterns. You step into the 2.0 pattern, the up-leveled pattern of I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take accountability and responsibility for myself. I'm going to choose to click up my energy frequency from blame and shame and guilting somebody to something like acceptance in the moment. That's what I got. What I had today, I did not have acceptance. I had, I'm not going to say anything, so I'm not going to say anything nice. And so I'm just going to like, whoo, and ground it out until I can find my feet under myself and remember who it is that I am. And who I am is a powerful woman. And who I am is someone who is a leader for others. And so what that means for me is I hold myself at a certain standard. Doesn't mean I'm perfect, but man, does it mean that I'm going to wrestle with my own internal shadow when it comes up. And it's a privilege to do so. What a great thing, right? And then I get to come out the other side and feel a little softer, connect with my husband, understand that he's human just like me, right? That he does things that are annoying just like me. And then we get to go on and have our day. And I don't have to spend the day in my head doing the thing in my head that's building a PowerPoint presentation against him. Yeah, and he did this, and 5 years ago he did that, and I could never this, and I should just do that, right? All of that stuff. So if I'm powerful, what am I putting my power towards? Because if I'm putting it towards the PowerPoint presentation that's going to tear somebody else down, even if they deserve it, whatever that means, right, in our minds, is that where it is that I want to put my power? For me, no. Doesn't mean that I don't want to in that moment. Sure, I'm human, right? So there can be a part of me demanding that I get rageful or angry or whatever. But because I'm powerful, I get to decide. I get to have discernment. I get to ground and breathe and use all the things that so many of you, and I know a lot of you in here, have read so many books, and you have a yoga mat practice, and you do breath work, and you are teachers and therapists and healers and doctors, and you're really smart in so many ways. And so it's game on time in that moment. Don't self-sabotage. In that moment, that's the moment when it's game on. Right? What a cool thing. What a cool get to. What else are you going to do? Devolve back into the old thing? That's the easy, right? Some of us want, maybe not want, some of us are willing to do the thing that feels challenging because we want to see what's on the other side. Who am I on the other side of this? Who are you on the other side of this? And so the next step is the easy step. It's the common step. It's breathing and setting down the rope. It's the most common thing. And it's the thing that we are most likely to sabotage ourselves around, right? And so my invitation for you is to notice the next few days, notice the next week, where it is that you can breathe and drop the rope. And who are you when you do that? The women who I work with in my 8-week program are brave and courageous and decide to do this process in community with me and some other women and my co-facilitator, Anna. And I have a really strong belief that number one, we don't have to do this alone. And number two, we get to have fun along the way. So please post any of your comments below, any questions that you might have that I didn't quite get to. I'm really grateful that you're here in this space. I hope that this information, that these videos that I make for you are helpful, because I know not everyone in here is going to work with me, and that's fine. So I'm just giving you what it is that I do. Like, do it. Hold yourself to it. If it connects with you, if it feels like an alignment, then I invite you to do it, and then come back and tell me how it went. Invite your friends if you'd like for them to be part of this community. Always welcome. They're always welcome here. Take good care. Talk to you next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Friday.